go. YouTube, it's been too long. Sorry for not streaming more recently. I've been heavily researching the topic that we are discussing tonight. The topic that we are discussing tonight is something that you've heard me cover before on this channel. Maybe not exactly the version that you're getting tonight, but what this is a thumbnail that my beautiful wife made. The thumbnail reads, "The Mafia of Science." There's a little me in the corner, but trust me, that's a "the." What are we covering? The very world that we live in is a mystery. Life is a mystery. How did we get here? What are we doing here? Well, we rely on science to tell us these things, right? And before science, man relied on religion to tell us these things. How did we get here? Like I said in my last video, it's like we just spawned into Minecraft. Whoop, gold, fully formed planets, fully formed universe, life. The order was wrong there. Somebody's got to tell us how we got here. It doesn't make any sense. Well, according to the Bible, our Creator made this reality about 7,500 years ago, or at least built Adam 7,500 years ago. We're made in the image of God. We're in a designed universe. From the most brilliant mind you could possibly, we can't even imagine the mind of God. And he told us this. He wrote it down in his book, or he had Moses write it down. I did this. This is what I did. Well, unfortunately, bad people have taken this information over time and have done despicable, horrible things, including the theocracy that reigned in Europe in the Middle Ages, that birthed the Church of England, which is the same theocracy but with divorce. And the people growing up in Europe at that time were usually working class, serfs, peasants. They were poor, they were sick. And then you had this church, enterprise, this church monopoly. And so the working class people grew up hating this religious authority. And this birthed the Age of Enlightenment. The Age of Enlightenment was quickly metastasized into rabid natural science, dogmatic religious belief in the natural order of science, worshiping the creation, not the Creator. Man comes from a puddle of mud and then is made in the image of a mutated chimpanzee. This is something that happened very recently on the scale of human history and has so thoroughly changed how humankind perceives their reality that the vast majority of people that live today, there's 8 billion people, and there's probably 5-ish billion, believe that we are animals, that we and the other animals were all the same. Now, of course, they classify us as animals, and that basically means we have a reflexive response, and we intake food, so like we're an animal, whatever. But we all know that we're not animals. We all know that there's a difference between chimpanzee and human, and fish and frog and human, and birds and human. So why do we believe this so thoroughly? Why do we believe so thoroughly that, or why does the world at large believe so thoroughly that we're just animals in a meaningless universe? Well, they believe this because of these guys. These guys here. This is our usual suspects lineup. Thomas Henry Huxley, right in the middle. Thomas Henry Huxley's 2 grandsons, Julain Huxley and Aldous Huxley, are bookending him there on the left and on the right. The Huxley family has had such an outrageous impact on how we perceive what humanity is, what life is, what the earth is. Many people don't know this because they don't teach this in college. They don't teach this in high school. They don't teach this. They don't teach you, hey, you believe this because of these 5 yahoos. They teach you, you believe this because of science. Science proved this, right? And so the world has adopted a new religion, the religion of humanism, the religion of Darwinian evolution, the religion of the natural order. And it is a religion. And I'm going to show you tonight that the individuals that did this intended to start a religion. L. Ron Hubbard did this. L. Ron Hubbard was like, oh, I'm hanging out with Aleister Crowley, and I'm doing terrible satanic things, and I'm going to start a church, and people are going to be super into it. I'm going to sell a lot of books. People just start religions. Joseph Smith did this. Well, these guys did it because that's how you really control people, right? You tell everybody you're God, or you tell everybody that you're a God king appointed by God, or you tell everyone that you're the prophet of God, and then you just control the people. This is why there's so much frustration and so much negative bias against even Christianity today, is because people have done this throughout the ages. You know, they did it in Egypt. They did it in Babylon, obviously. They did it in Rome. And then I'm going to cover the Catholic Church at some point. Crazy what happened with that. But Christianity comes into play. The Roman Catholic Church happens, which is probably just the Roman Empire. I'm pretty sure that they faked their death, and that the Catholic Church is actually just the pantheon of gods, and that Roman system that was actually killing Christians. Anyways, that's another story for another day. That theocracy, which was the expansion of the British Empire, conquered the Western world in the name of Jesus, right? If you've ever read what Jesus said, he said nothing along the lines of conquer and kill in my name. I need you to go. I don't know. That's my Jesus, John Wayne. Jumping Jesus, John Wayne. I can't impersonate Jesus, but he didn't say, go get him. He didn't say that. He didn't say, go get him for me. I need you to go. And it was the opposite. It was lay down your life. It was expanding this belief system through love, not conquering. So it's terrible that has happened. Well, you have a revolt. We always go from left to right, non-believer to believer, liberal to conservative. People just go back and forth, and they constantly offer false dichotomies. This is, if you've studied conspiracy, you know this. It's false dichotomies. It's like, are you left or are you right? It's like, neither. Well, independent isn't an option. Choose a side. Then we had the centrifuge of the last few years, and everybody's really polarized, whatever. They separate us from classes. They separate us in belief and, all these different kind of things. Because a house divided will fall. This is all, everything that I'm saying actually ends up coming back down to the validity of Scripture and the laws of order that the lawgiver, the creator of the universe, God, Yeshua, built for us. And so when Jesus came to the earth and he was telling you things like, you can't serve two masters, he was talking about how this actually works. Whoever controls what you believe controls what you do with your life, right? And so it was really slick what these guys did. It was really slick what they did, and it really sucks if you're a Christian because you send your kid to school and you think you're like, okay, I need to do the right thing. I need to put my kid in school. And next thing you know, the children are being indoctrinated to believe this. And then they're in university and they dye their hair blue and they hate God. It all comes down to the belief of these individuals. Okay, so how we're going to do this is it's going to be, I'm going to introduce you to the Huxley family. I'm going to show a couple clips from an author's lecture about just how important the Huxleys are in science and in what we believe. It's one of the most impactful families in the history of humankind, especially in the West. Then we're going to cover who Thomas Henry Huxley was. We're going to cover Thomas Henry's relationship with Darwin, Lyell, and Haeckel. This gets really bad. Ends up in Germany, obviously, in the 30s and 40s. And then we're going to follow or look into Julain Huxley, the grandson of Thomas Henry Huxley. I didn't even put in Aldous Huxley in this. It's crazy. I'm doing a show on the Huxleys, and I'm not even going to include that Aldous Huxley wrote the book The Brave New World, which is an entire prophecy to what's happening. And not because he guessed it, because he was in the club. Grandfathered in, quite literally, by his grandfather. But we don't have to talk about him. He just fictionized what they're doing, right? It's crazy. Okay, Thomas Henry Huxley. Actually, I'm going to bring this over first. What do we believe in largely as a corporate America, as the Western world? We believe in something called humanism. By we, I don't mean we. I mean they, them, not me. I don't do that. I don't believe this. I don't believe in humanism. I'm a theist. I'm a believer in the living God. What is humanism, you might ask? This is important because this is the religion they created. They substituted believing in the living God with humanism. Defining humanism. Roughly speaking, the word humanist has come to mean someone who trusts to the scientific method when it comes to understanding how the universe works and rejects the idea of the supernatural, and is therefore atheist or agnostic. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it absolutely amazing that where do they start with their manifesto? In the beginning. Right? The book says, Bereshit bara Elohim, in the beginning. If you want to know about humanism, what does it say? Humanist is someone who trusts to the scientific method when it comes to the understanding of how the universe works and rejects the idea of the supernatural. Okay? So natural processes created this reality. You hear me talk about it with reductionism and materialism all the time. What else is a humanist? They make their ethical decisions based on reason, empathy, and a concern for human beings and other sentient animals. Not all that dissimilar from Christianity, right? As they're doing their 10 Commandments. Believes that in the absence of an afterlife and any discernible purpose to the universe, human beings can act to give their own lives meaning by seeking happiness in this life, materialism, and helping others to do the same. I didn't read all this. This could be a long one. A humanist believes that in the absence of an afterlife and any discernible purpose to the universe. Oh, I'm a humanist. What does that mean? Well, it means that the universe definitely created itself, and there's no point to this reality. None. Zero. And I'm an animal. I'm an animal. So now I have to try to find meaning because I'm a humanist. The religion that these guys built. I can't wait to show you. This is going to be one of those things. They always happen with my live shows where they seem to get better as the night progresses. I get more into it. My brain fog lifts, and we start to put these connections together. A lot of what I do with VOR is take at least 3 points of information and put them together in a way that a lot of people don't necessarily realize. It's 3 what seem to be disparate things, and you pull them together. We're kind of doing that tonight with 7 pieces. But when we get to the end of the Thomas Henry Huxley chapter module, which I plan to actually do a chapter heading on this next video in the description. When you get to the Thomas Henry Huxley one, the way that starts and closes is like, wow, how did you not know this? This is crazy. When we get into Julain Huxley, it's going to be the same thing. So at the end of each one of these, I'm going to wrap it up and I'm going to show you a huge scientific mistake that they made, how wrong they actually were, and how dangerous what they taught is. Okay, back to humanism. An appeal to reason in contrast to revelation or religious authority as a means of finding out about the natural world and the destiny of man. See, this always comes into play. It's not just, I believe in materialism. No, the destiny of man, and also grounding for morality. Human ethics is also distinguished by placing the end of moral action in the welfare of humanity rather than in fulfilling the will of God. We don't want to do the will of God, right? That man should show respect to man, irrespective of class. This is what Jesus actually taught. Man should show respect to man, irrespective of class, race, creed, is fundamental to the humanist attitude to life. Live an honest, meaningful life without following a formal religious creed. So it's constantly like trying to be, somewhat happy without God, like specifically without God. Okay, I want to share one thing to you, and then we'll move on. Again, humanists believe in a commitment to the perspective, interests, and centrality of human persons, human worship. A belief in reason and autonomy as foundational aspects of the human existence. A belief that reason, skepticism, and the scientific method are the only appropriate instruments for discovering the truth and structuring the human community. So they believe an appeal to reason in contrast to revelation or religious authority as a means to finding out about the natural world. Let me just define this to you. They believe in the scientific method. They believe you cannot get these answers in religion. And they believe in an appeal to reason in contrast to the revelation or religious authority as a means to finding out about the natural world. So they basically don't know how anything got here and what anything's doing here, just like we do. They won't believe in God, but they will believe in science, right? Science took the place of God, right? This is what this is. Really simple. You believe in the book. We believe in science. We believe in the scientific method. We don't even believe in what they find out. We just believe in science generally. That's what humanism is. Okay. We need to look at a very famous passage in the book, in the true history of this reality. This is going to come up tonight as a theme. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made, and said to the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, Well, what he actually said is we can eat from anything but that one tree. And the serpent said to the woman, clarifying point on this. The devil says, Yea, hath God said. The first step is for the devil to get you to question God's word. You've heard me say this before. This is what it is. Did God say? Did God say that 7,500 years ago the world was created and 5,300 years ago there was a flood and we all descended from Adam and Eve and then Noah and his children? Did God say that? Because it's not true, because we believe in humanism. So the devil attacks what God said, the validity of God's word. Hath God said? Then she said, You shall not eat of it. If you do, you will die. And the serpent said to the woman, You shall not die. You will not die. God didn't say that. You won't die. And for God knows in the day that you eat thereof, your eyes shall be open, and you shall be as gods. You can be God. Okay? If I did this correctly and executed it correctly, we could finish each module with this. God didn't say that. You will live forever, and you will be like God. So when you see how this ends with Julain Huxley being the guy who created the term transhumanism and what transhumanism is trying to do, Thomas Henry Huxley and his grandsons affected us so profoundly, our past, what we believe about our history, how we live in the present, and what's going to happen in the future. It's unbelievable. So it's so important for you guys to really try to consume this information. You know, people have discussions at their churches or with their neighbors or whatever. It's like, did you know that the people who built this reality or who built the narrative about what we believe about this reality are psycho eugenicist control freaks? Did you know that? That's why you believe what you believe. Did you know that? And you can go down and bring receipts. It's really an important discussion. So please make notes tonight if you can, or watch it again and make notes again. Okay, what I want to show you is not from my own mouth, because who cares? This is a lady who wrote on Thomas Henry Huxley and the Huxley family. And she basically, her thought here, what is her name? Alison Bashford. She's a historian. She starts writing this book and really realizes how much of an effect the Huxley family had on us, and she didn't even realize it. So check this out. What and why do I keep talking about Thomas Henry Huxley and the Huxley family?
I thought was really interesting. So I think he brings something really new to the subject matter there. The other thing I wanted to talk about very briefly is that for all that, they're not just dead white men. I think the important thing to stress with your book is that we live in the shadow of these two guys. We live in the shadow of the Huxleys. You know, we live in a. You talk at some point about we live in a sort of neoliberal version of the sort of transhumanist IVF kind of world that Julain wrote about.
They would say that we live in their light.
Yeah, not the shadow, in their light, absolutely. Yeah.
We live in the shadow of the Huxleys. This neoliberal transhumanist nightmare we're going into, or in. And she says, we don't live in their shadow, we live in their light. I watch a lot of these kind of lectures. It's pretty crazy. It's crazy to watch these people talk about this guy and gloss over what a horrible human he is and actually talk him up. You heard him qualify what dead white men. Everything's, about the white man and, the women separating us in whatever way they can. They're just dead white men. Why do they matter? Well, because they've changed. They changed how everybody believes and everything everybody thinks. Listen to her next statement on the Huxleys.
The genre was really even a thing. So, Julian Huxley became very important to me to anchor the 20th century and as a balance to the great scientist and science writer, his grandfather, in the 19th century. And around them, I could build the other stories through the 19th and 20th centuries. The great story that the Huxleys are at the centre of humanism, of the undoing of God, as Thomas Henry Huxley would have said, the idea that our understanding of nature needs to be evidence-based, that we can sense, not based on things that we can't know. Thomas Henry Huxley invented the word agnostic. His grandson Julain invented the word transhumanism. So there's this long humanist thread that I could use the Huxleys to think through as well.
The undoing of God, as Thomas Henry Huxley would have put it. Thomas Henry Huxley is responsible for the undoing of God. When you see me do these debates, and I talk about it being a religion, and I talk about materialism, a lot of this is rooted in, I've known this information for a long time, and when I am debating with an atheist, sometimes they're very nice. I'm like, oh yeah, I hear where you're coming from. But largely, I just am like, do you understand? You're just thinking Thomas Henry Huxley's thoughts. I don't think you even understand that. Okay, watch this last thing she says on this video. This is who is Thomas Henry Huxley in the eyes of historians, scientific historians. Give you an idea what we're dealing with here.
They're dead. They were white. They were male. Yeah. Although there are women in the book, you're quite right.
Really?
And I wouldn't mind coming back to that question.
Yeah, please. Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, maybe later after we have a few questions. They're not dead in the sense that their ideas absolutely live with us and shape us for good and ill. And I hope I weigh both of those up in the book. So this is a family. Again, the humanism that this family drives. Whatever we think about that, they drove that idea forward. We live in a world where we now think of humans and other animals. We think of humans as in nature. We think of us with and alongside ecologies, the word that Julain would have used, but his grandfather wouldn't have. But that is now our second nature, if I can put it that way. And I think that there's all kinds, for Julain's generation, this the kind of environmentalism and, to use a much older phrase, conservation that is...
I'm not going to let her get us off the rails here about the environmental stuff that they do, because it's also tied into this. But we think what we do today about us being animals in a meaningless universe because of this guy. Can you believe that? She's like, is this crazy? She's speaking very factually. This is what it is. We think this way because of him. You've seen me in the debates. We're not animals. And they laugh me out of the room. They throw tomatoes at me. We're animals. We are animals. We are animals. We think this way because of this man. I hope that people, if you're listening to this and you're atheist, agnostic, atheist, whatever, and you believe in naturalism, I hope where maybe there's a part of you that's like, I was escaping religion. I was getting away from this. I hope you can at least reflect on the fact that the individuals who built this intended to build a religion and control what you believe about who you are. Who am I? What am I doing here? Where are we going? This are the questions we all have to ask. So they told you this. They didn't have the evidence. They don't have the evidence. They have some pieces of evidence. You can make a lot of things look like something in defense of your argument, but there's more issues with it than there is proof of it, and we're just still taught as fact. It was really nice debating the guy the other day who said, Darwin was probably wrong. I'm an evolutionist, but we're going to figure out something else. Like, Darwinian evolution sucks, and it's done. And we believe it because of these guys. Okay. I don't normally give a script or like I don't think I've actually ever written something down for me to say. These individuals that taught us this, they're psycho-racists who built a scientific technocracy designed to undo God, like we just saw her say, and then appoint themselves as the rulers of this new scientific enterprise, this technocracy. Isn't that crazy? They're not just your guy down the road. You guys have heard me talk about psychopaths go into power. That happens. It can happen in religion. It can happen in atheism, obviously. These guys, somebody said in the chat, aren't some of them eugenicists? No, they're all eugenicists. They're not just eugenicists. They created ethnology and the eugenics movement. These white European men, aristocracy of Europe, worshipped nature. We're going to cover that later, about an hour from now. They hated the God of the Bible, and they were as racist as the day is long. The most racist people we've had in modernity, hands down. They're the reason Nazi Germany happened. And the history that I'm going to show you guys with it it's unbelievable. Yeah, they're racist. They're psycho-racists, hell-bent on building a scientific technocracy and undoing God. Isn't that unbelievable? Okay. I'm going to close out her video because I'd be super tilted to go back and watch it again. So let's go to now. The next part of this module is going to be Thomas Henry Huxley specifically. Thomas Henry Huxley very famously debated individuals. It's so interesting to me that I'm doing this with YouTube and TikTok, debating people. And, the other day people were like, you got to debate Neil deGrasse Tyson and Aaron Ra and those guys. And I'm hoping to be able to debate them. As much as things change, things stay the same. And the way that Thomas Henry Huxley pushed the theory of evolution down the throat of every child that's been reared in this country in the last 100 years or 60 years, when they really started pushing it, was through scientific discussions, scientific philosophic discussions. And in this rather important moment, well documented from multiple sources, Thomas Henry Huxley defeated in a debate, right? Theist versus atheist debate like we see on TikTok all the time. He defeated this guy, and it opened up the minds of the individuals there. They go, wow, that was dominating performance. This is a dramatization. This is not maybe historically accurate, but I think it's well portrayed. We're going to watch about 3 minutes of it. This is I think it's actually supposed to represent Sir Richard Owen. I think that's who it represents, but this is the Christian, the protagonist.
Any contribution to our natural history from the pen of Mr. Charles Darwin is certain to command attention. His latest publication, The Origin of Species, is manifestly regarded by him as the opus upon which his future fame is to rest. Mr. Darwin claims that every living thing, every fish, plant, fungus, fly, elephant, man, turnip, are all equally the lineal descendants of the same common ancestor. Such a notion is absolutely incompatible with the Word of God. Man was made in the image of God and redeemed by the eternal Son. Natural selection is an ingenious theory for denying the working and therefore the existence of the Creator.
This is so important, you guys. A lot of people have tried to encourage me to do more like Christian-specific teaching And my calling is more for the lost and to try to bridge that gap. When you see these debates, whether it's me or Kent Hovind or Standing for Truth or whoever, this is what we're really debating. Why do you believe the Bible? Like, why would you dedicate your life to a God that you can't see? What do you believe about this reality? Well, we know in the book of Romans it says that his divine attributes are clearly seen in the mechanism of the universe. I'm paraphrasing. People have always looked, and it wasn't a question of whether there was a God or wasn't a God. It was who's God, right? You get the cool story in Jonah, where he's got the people that are driving the boat, and they're like, who's your God? And you're like, it's the God of the Jews? Oh no, we didn't realize it. Repent, and they all turned to God. It was which God was doing this, right? And obviously I believe anyways, that the other gods, little g gods, were just myth or maybe potentially fallen angelic. I'm doing a study on the Nephilim right now, so we might come out with that soon. So, Baal and Molech could have been principalities or actually fallen angels. Who cares? So you have this idea. What was I just talking about? I'm having really bad brain fog tonight. Sorry. Fallen angels. What do you believe in? Are you believing in this God or that God, the fallen angels, whatever? This entire European culture, civilization, they believed in the Christian God. Sure, it was misappropriated and it was kind of on the evil spectrum, whatever. Sorry, the Catholicism. But they believed that they were made in the image of God. And this guy is saying you cannot make compatible the theory of evolution with the Bible. So when Huxley and his company set out, what did they set out to do? Disprove the Bible, right? Because then in the heart of the person, you go, why would I believe that book? And this is the discussion they're having. Standard theist-atheist battle. Watch his response. Oops, you can't watch the response because I got to switch this over. Hold on. Okay, now you can watch.
Differs markedly from that of all other mammals.
Unfortunately, my Lord Bishop, you have been misinformed. If we are unprejudiced judges, we have to admit that there is as little interval as animals between the gorilla and the man as there is between the gorilla and the baboon. It is speech alone and not some spiritual gift that makes man a reasonable being. That is the source of our unlimited intellectual progress, but that does not disguise the fact that to the very root and foundation of his nature, man is one with the rest of the organic world. No one who has ever dissected the brain of an ape agrees with Professor Owen. His findings are wrong. I can only assume...
Okay. Isn't it crazy? You guys, a lot of you have watched me debate for so long. They were doing the same thing. They were doing the same thing back there. Back then, it was just science has disproven God. God is necessary. There's nothing new under the sun. We are one with all of the rest of nature. We are no different than the animals. We are exactly the same. We are animals, let's worship the earth now. This is standard evolutionary discussion, obviously, from a guy who, watch this, Darwin called the devil's disciple, evolution's high priest. The religious part of this, the religion. Oh, cool, I gotta do something here. I apologize, guys, for the brain fog that's happening tonight. I have this quote from this. Thomas Henry Huxley. Charles Darwin to Thomas Henry Huxley. Dear Mr. Huxley, blah, 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 blah. My good and kind agent for the propagation of the gospel, i.e. the devil's gospel, ever yours, C. Darwin. Okay, so Thomas Henry Huxley, who just gave that speech, was known as the devil's disciple and evolution's high priest. guy's an actual high priest. Isn't that terrible? Oh my gosh. Okay. And Darwin says to him, my good and kind agent for the propagation of the devil's gospel. Watch this last clip it's from that video we just watched, but check this out. I got this. Is that the scene? Okay, there we go. That's how I have to do it. YouTube, scene, on scene. It's really hard to do this with brain fog and also a glitchy OBS. I got to figure out a new program. The end of this discussion. So he, beats everybody up and says, if you believe in the Bible, you're stupid. We're all animals. And then this is supposedly Thomas Henry Huxley and Darwin together.
We'll probably never know the truth.
Well, the truth, Charles, is in your book. It's the most interesting thing I've ever read. The reasoning is so entirely satisfactory to me that if the facts don't fit, then, well, so much the worse for the facts.
Did you hear that?
Facts don't fit, then, well...
He loves the theory so much.
We'll probably never know the truth.
Well, the truth, Charles, is in your book. It's the most interesting thing I've ever read. The reasoning is so entirely satisfactory to me that if the facts don't fit, then, well, so much the worse for the facts.
Okay. Dramatization, right? They would have never said that. Oh, boy. Thomas Henry Huxley. His quote, "The slaying of a beautiful hypothesis by an ugly fact." think this was about truth, Thomas Henry Huxley? I'm going to make you slide over. You think this is about truth, Thomas Henry Huxley? You think this is about the science, Thomas Henry Huxley? Atheists who debate this, you think this is about the fossil and your interpretation of the fossil? No. You think what this man thought, and this man thought ill of the God of the Bible. He hated religion, and I'm going to show you what that was about here in a minute. He went in and won scientific debates on the TikTok of the time, organized a group of people who set out to take over science, the entire headspace and bandwidth of the intellect of the human mind through science, in his own words. And now, 180 years later, we blindly adhere to his theory. His theory that they haven't found the evidence that they would have wanted to support it. His theory based on convincing people that they're no different than the orangutan and that they're all just animals in a meaningless universe. These guys. Let's go back to Thomas Henry Huxley. Zoom in. One day we'll have a producer. And it'll be a little easier for me to focus on what I'm actually trying to do here. Thomas Henry Huxley, known as Darwin's bulldog. A lot of you have seen me read from this before. This is the Encyclopedia Britannica. This isn't Answers in Genesis. Okay. On the origin, beginning to write The Origin of the Species, Darwin saw Huxley's Star Rising, a visit to Darwin's down house in 1856. Darwin was a total elite, rich aristocrat, if you didn't know that. He didn't work a day in his life. He just rode around on the boat and tried to build a fairy tale to sell to everybody. His visit to Down House laid the foundation for a long relationship between the two men and their families. Huxley's wife and Emma Darwin shared concerns over their husband's scientific theorizing and its theological consequences. I got this. This is what happens. This is what brain fog looks like when you try and speak with it. And the Darwins stood as godparents to 2 of the 8 Huxley children. Darwin and Huxley, meanwhile, complemented each other perfectly. The reclusive Darwin needed a public champion and defender. It's basically like Moses and Aaron. Huxley had initial difficulty with natural selection itself and opted for an internal source of variation that could produce new species at a stroke. Yes, Thomas Henry Huxley didn't believe in Darwin either. Maybe I don't give him enough credit. He was smart. I'll give him that. Anyways, nonetheless, he saw Darwin's naturalistic, i.e. non-miraculous approach as a valuable aid in his campaign You ready? His campaign to do what? Do good science? What do you guys think? His campaign to really just do good science? No. His campaign to build an independent scientific elite, unfettered by the constraints of the old order. Trust the science, you guys. To build an independent, like this is what you should learn in school, what you don't. Build an independent scientific elite unfettered by the constraints of the old order. The old order was Christianity. In particular, again, Catholicism and the Church of England, but it was still this was still what the old order was. And I think Huxley's dad was like a minister, an Anglican minister. But anyways, therefore, rather than shy away from the controversial aspects of evolutionary theory, Huxley played them up, using Darwin's Origin of Species as a Whitworth gun in the armory of liberalism. Unlike some contemporaries who sought a reconciliation between science and theology, he framed the debate over creation and evolution in black and white, either-or terms, and was unforgiving of colleagues who straddled the fence. It's like, I want to do science, and I think I chucks onto something, but I don't want to say anything, because, we know who runs the show. Nope. He went directly into the fire. That's exactly his way of pulling this point across. A defining moment in this professional campaign came early in an exchange with the Bishop of Oxford, Samuel Wilberforce. This is the one I was just showing you, or a version of it anyways. It helped to put the men of science on an intellectual par with the powerful clergy. The reality was more complicated. At Oxford, Huxley was supported by some liberal Anglican clergy who disliked the hardline bishop, and Wilberforce himself subsequently worked alongside Huxley at the Zoological Society. That's interesting. Let's see here. He spoke of developing a church scientific. This is Huxley. Nor did Huxley shy away from appropriating religious authority when it suited his purpose. He spoke of developing a church scientific. Yes, he wanted to build a religion. If I could do this correctly, I would keep going back to it is a religion. We got a priest already. We got a prophet already. He wants to use religious authority and create a church scientific. When you read when I read to you what Julian Huxley wrote about his calling in his life, about this religion of science, it's crazy. Like, I made my shirt, the Priests of the Religion of Science shirt. I made that with VOR like 3 years ago. It's legitimate. I was kind of being cheeky, but it's legitimately a religion. Let's see here. Huxley carried thanks for doing that. Huxley carried the standard of scientific naturalism and evolution over a number of battlefields. He challenged the notion of supernatural creation, informing his democratic artisans that humans had arisen from animals, a lowly ancestor bright future image that appealed to the downtrodden. Oh, the working class liked this idea. They still do. And that Darwin's nature was a book open for all to read, rather than the prerogative of priests, right? So he's going, priests want to control you, and they're lording over you, and you're a muggle. No, you're rising up. You're an animal, and you're powerful. You can be God. Your priest is telling you what to do? No. We'll tell you what to do. We'll tell you what to do. I mean, you got to tip your cap to the guy. I mean, because I believe God is real and I believe the devil's real, I think that this wasn't just him acting alone, pro bono. I think it was probably him in league with the little g God of this world, who had a really effective plan here that 200 years later is still happening. He plunged headlong into the inflammatory issues of human ancestry. Darwin avoided it, but Huxley made it his specialty. In 1861, he denied that humans and ape brains differ significantly, sparking a raging dispute with Richard Owen. That's the one we just saw in that clip. That brought human evolution to the public attention. Let's see here. A couple more really important paragraphs in this article. And then we're going to get into his scientific elite that he created, that he's saying he's going to create, that he did create, and what they did. Huxley's controversial positions in the 60s and 70s won an increasing number of his contemporaries, leading scientists in the era, scientific popularizer without peer. These qualities gave Huxley the levers necessary to elevate the position of science in British society. Right? We got the British Royal Society, and they were bringing up this scientific technocracy, and so they needed control over the whole thing. And he helped build a social order in which science and professionalism replaced classics and patronage. How does one guy do all of this? Anyways, he didn't fight alone. He had these dudes. This is the X Club that you've seen me discuss a bunch of times. So I'm trying to keep this together a little bit chronologically. Huxley formed the X Club in 1864. Okay, way before Nazi Germany, obviously, to advance science. Within a decade, they were parceling out Royal Society posts. They infiltrated the Royal Society, which was a big deal to be able to get that, because Huxley didn't actually come from money. He made his money being... he was actually an autodidact and a polymath, and it was a brilliant guy. But anyways, he made his money, infiltrated the British Royal Society, and now they're putting all of their guys in as the head of the secret religious society of science. Anyways, their mouthpiece was The Reader, in which Huxley, answering conservative leader criticism of Darwinism, notoriously claimed that science would achieve domination over the whole realm of the intellect. He said this to the you got the religious and the political leaders, and he goes, yeah, science is going to achieve domination over the whole realm of the intellect. I should probably like a delirious laugh. It's so infuriating. And Nature, remember Nature magazine? Oh, is it peer reviewed? Nature magazine was created by Huxley's team in 1869. Nature magazine exists because of Thomas Henry Huxley. It's Huxley's scientific propaganda. I'm going to say that again. Sure, it may have tightened up. Maybe there's some actual science being done there. But Nature magazine is scientific propaganda, created by the propagandist who intended to create a scientific technocracy unfettered by the constraints of the old order. Something I've looked into, and I want to keep looking into, I need to find time to do this, is how much money the NSF has, that we've paid for advancing the theory of evolution. A cursory glance, it's well over hundreds of millions of dollars. I think like 180 or 200 was the where I kind of lost count. That was like over, 12 years or something. Government gives the money. People post this, very, very nice outfits and a lot of certifications. The world goes, wow, these guys really figured it out. If you watch my video on Nebraska Man, they found a tooth. They're like, this is definitely the missing link. And the guy, Henry Fairfield Osborne, he's like, I looked at it, I inspected, and it's 100% anthropoid ape, for sure. That was like his science. I looked at it for a week. Science. Anyways, that's all. Back then, they weren't doing anything. Are you kidding me? What were they doing? What did they have? I don't think did they have a telescope? Somebody had like a glass ball at the end of a leather tube. That was their space division. And then I don't think they had, maybe they had microscopes. I don't know. But what were they doing? Basically looking at dead things. Tell you what this is. Anyways, pretty easy to control the science back then, because there was like one television station, the BBC, and they were in on it. It's fine. And now to our chief science correspondent, Jimmy Savile. Okay. You might not know that joke. It's a bad one, though. Okay, let's see here. Huxley also served as president of the Geologic Society. You don't say. So you ran the so you can tell us where we got here, and you can tell us what the Earth is and how that worked? Great. Huxley also served as president of the Geologic Society. All of these eugenicists they all had the same position. They ran the zoo, which is the living animals. They ran the paleontology, which is the dead animals. And then they ran the Geologic Society and the Ethnologic Society and the science clubs. The same thing in America. If you're interested in this, there's some redundant information, but go watch my video. I'd like to put a card up here if I was so diligent. And it's the Atheist Science Club. I covered some of these things back then. I covered the X Club, but Anyways, I really got into when Henry Fairfield Osborn, Madison Grant, those guys that did the Otabanga thing. I covered all that. It's so devastating. But anyways, it's the same thing. You run each department, right? It's like, you tell me what the Earth does. Other materialist is definitely material. So it's a natural thing, totally natural. How do we know? Because science. I looked at it, and I have the degree. Geology. That's what they did. It's what they did. At that time, anyways. I know it has advanced, anyways. The Ethnological Society is so bad. Watch my Otabanga series on that. It's so devastating. Okay. With seats on 10 royal commissions deliberating on everything from fisheries to disease, he had clearly penetrated the labyrinth corridors of power. Weird. Wonder how he did that. Hit somebody on the inside. Okay, so this is Thomas Henry Huxley, and there's a dozen documentaries you could watch on him online, and they're good. It's he's an interesting guy. I can tell you the Huxley family is really interesting. No fan of their work. I'm no fan of their work. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at his scientific order, okay? He had this guy. You guys ever heard of the name Charles Darwin? Charles Darwin is a man who died a long time ago. Charles Darwin came up with a little theory, a theory ski, called the theory of evolution. You may have heard of it. It's a bummer that that's not showing like I wanted to. Hopefully I'll be able to read it to you anyways. Charles Darwin was great friends with that yahoo, Thomas Henry Huxley. Like really close. Definitely they were in love. I mean, I think that's like sounded like wrong, forgive me, brain fog, but the people that write on them say that they loved each other. They were, I don't know if in love or they loved each other, but they were like bros, right? They were like really hung out, whatever, really close. Some people say that Hitler was a Christian, which isn't true. Atheists say that, and I tell them they're wrong and they don't care. Some people say that Darwin wasn't a racist. They say that, yeah. I think he was actually an abolitionist. I'm sure for whatever social civic reasons, but he definitely believed that the white Europeans were greater than the subhumans. This is from his book, The Descent of Man. Charles Darwin writes, at some future period, not very distant, as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man, which was like the white people basically is what he meant there. The title of the book, which is The Origin of the Species, through natural selection, or the survival of the special races. What is the word? This is what brain fuck will do to me, I guess. I used to know. I can say the whole thing. The struggle for life. The struggle for life of the civilized races of the world, whatever, something like that. That's what you get tonight. You're getting like GoBots Luke tonight. The favored races is his civilized race of people, and that's his buddies. That's the buddies that built this enterprise. They're like, we're civilized, bona fide, and everybody else isn't. So we got to wipe them out or sterilize them because science. Okay, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. The non-Europeans. At the same time, the anthropomorphous apes, as Professor Schaffenhausen has remarked, will no doubt be exterminated. Whoa, there that goes. The break between man and his nearest allies will then be wider, for it will intervene between man in a more civilized state, as we may hope, even then the Caucasian, and some ape as low as a baboon, instead of, as now, between the Negro or Australian and the gorilla. Charles Darwin. This is the best of. Tribalism is not anything new. It's always happened. And I mean, I'm not a sociologist, but in the past, it was a bad idea to just blindly trust a person in the other tribe, because if they could take you and your resources, they may do such a thing. So it was like, are you friend or are you foe, right? What they did here is one of the most complicated, hundreds of years long, successful, socially engineered campaigns you could possibly imagine. The things that these individuals accomplished. Prior to eugenics, prior to this, yeah, you had serious conflicts. You know, these people hated these people and whatever. But you didn't really have the kind of state-sponsored systemic racism problem that they created, that these people created. The Jim Crow South, you know, this idea that people look a certain way, they have a certain skin color or whatever, therefore they're less evolved, they're more animalistic than we are, and therefore we as the lords need to lord over them. We're paying for this today. We pay for this today. A lot of the social justice movements are legitimate, valid things that happened that were terrible, right? There's terrible things that have happened. Different people being mean to different people. Well, when these guys basically used state monies at this point to tell everyone that they're the height of it, things like slavery became a lot more tenable because you could just control them. They're controllable animals. So it was the white European elites, basically, and the more deist elites that came here and founded this country, who were involved in this terrible slave trade. And today, working class people have to deal with it because these individuals do something called a false flag attack, where they want the ire directed. You know, we want to go to war with this group, or we want to go to war with that group. Well, we don't want to go to war because our young men and women are going to die. We don't want to do that. It's like, well, we have to go to war. Why? Because they just attacked us. Yeah, they totally took out our boat. And they had the flag of the enemy. Look, we need to go get them. It was their flag. They were like, doo-doo, we're coming to get them, right? This is happening in the whole Palestinian-Israel conflict. Science, condoned this, created systemic racism through science, through the elites, and did terrible things, basically blamed it on all of us and blamed it on Christianity. The same individuals here who say over and over in their own writing that they are trying to get rid of God, they did these things, and now in 2024, people are upset because of working class Christians, basically. When it wasn't working class Christians, it was elite, atheist, racists. That sucks. But that's how this happened. You know, white, black, left, right, gay, straight, believer, not believer. They just keep us separated and fighting each other and selling us the solution to a false dichotomy. That's their modus operandi. And then tell us that we have to vote for something that we have no say over. Actually, no say over. And I'm not being a conspiracy theorist by saying that. You can look at our world and data, and any actual impactful thing that's going to have any direct effect on your wealth and your freedom, you don't get to vote for that. You get to choose between McDonald's and Burger King. That's all you get to vote for. But it'll always work. It'll always work. They've been doing this for a long time. And they work for their father, the devil. And the devil knows us. He knows probably you. I don't think he's omniscient. Maybe he doesn't know you. I don't know. But he knows that we're sheep. He knows how to corral us. What does Jesus say? Beware of the wolf. I've thought about canceling the show tonight because of how bad my brain fog is, but I'm just going to be weird. Remember when Jesus said, be afraid of the wolf? He prowls around like a lion. It's like Wizard of Oz from Jesus' parable. Anyways, there's that version. Anyways, what was I saying? This is like, it's almost like somebody who would be drinking, although I don't drink. I'm drunk off of coffee. Here I go. Cheers. We need to get a alcohol check on that coffee. Those of you who know me know I don't drink, so. Okay, what am I at? Charles Lyell. Just tonight's going to be like me kind of making sense about something. And then it's going to be me talking my way into a corner and then me not knowing how I got there. That's what we're doing tonight. That's how this is going. Autoimmune conditions. Don't get them. Don't get them. Okay. This is the one we're going to do next. This guy. That's the one. Why is it so small? OBS. Doing OBS stuff. Okay, cool. Many of you have heard me talk about this guy and his bearing on us believing that the flood didn't happen. People come in my live show and they're like, you're the stupidest person I've ever seen. I don't even know you. I just know how stupid you are because you believe in the flood. You think those fossils were formed in a flood? You think that canyon was formed in a flood? That's because you're stupid. Stupid people believe that. Well, the reason they say that to me is because of this yahoo. Charles Lyell. He sucks. These are some of my least favorite people I've ever researched. As an author, friend, and correspondent, Charles Lyell played a crucial role in shaping Darwin's scientific life. You don't say. Charles Lyell, born to a wealthy gentry family in Scotland. You don't say. Lyell had a classical and legal education, but by the 1820s, that was a long time ago, he had become entranced by the popular and exciting subject of geology that Thomas Henry Huxley appointed himself to lead. Geologists had already revealed a succession of unexpected forms of animals and plants. Geologists had done this, yes, not the paleontologists, the geologists, and demonstrated the need for a vastly longer time scale than allowed for by traditional biblical criticism. Really, those animals need to be really old. They used to say fossils took a long time to form. Isn't that funny? Lyell believed, define Lyell for me, Siri, or whoever this is. Of course, you don't do it the time I want you to. Lyell believed, however, that the subject remained beset by speculation and uncertainty. In Principles of Geology, he aimed to make it a philosophically rigorous science based on actual causes. Actual causes, not biblical causes. Actual causes that could be viewed in action at the present time. Don't worry about the past. I've just told you that doesn't matter. The present is the key to the past. The past doesn't matter. Don't tell me how. Don't tell me. I have now. I have now, and I can tell you what it meant. I have now. Oh, that's got to be a quote. I don't know how I said it, but that's got to be a quote. Okay. This ruled out any sudden catastrophe. This ruled out the sudden catastrophes. Sorry, science. Science. Yep. Well, the rule I made up rules out catastrophes. So, guess they didn't happen. That's good logic. Chuck. In Principles of Geology, he aimed to make in a philosophically rigorous science. That's philosophically rigorous, that thinking. Based on actual causes that could be viewed in action at the present time. Realize how ridiculous this is. No, stop. You want to know what happened? Don't look at the past, look at now. It's like an 80s. Is he like writing lyrics for an 80s band? The past doesn't matter, just the present. We can make our own past. Charles Lyell, like emo 80s Charles Lyell. It's like a who's some of those really obscure bands. And I'm imagining him playing the synth. I need to make this a philosophically rigorous science based on actual causes that could be viewed in action at the present time. Don't worry about the past anymore. The past doesn't matter in Lyell's view. So if you don't know his whole thing, the present is the key to the past, which means that if we see a river flowing and the river's just flowing, then whatever is like at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, that river built that thing. Because it's not doing it now, right? There's no catastrophes. There's no catastrophes. It's not a thing. Get out of here. So, spoiler, he was totally wrong. I might actually do him as the first one of these yahoos. I have dirt on all these guys. I have dirty science on all of these yahoos. Like all of their ideas sucked. They were all wrong. They were just wrong. Okay, in Lyell's view, this ruled out any sudden catastrophes. No earth-destroying comets or mountains popping up like mushrooms. None of that. No floods is the rule. It's a no-flood zone. During the Beagle Voyage, Darwin became a zealous disciple. There's another one. Who do we have? Let's do our scientific religious checklist. I can't write this out. It's not going to happen. Anyways, we have disciple, we have prophet, we have high priest. Let's see here. Of the reforming approach to principles, especially the way in which small changes could be seen to add up over time to make big changes, this is clear in Darwin's innovative explanation of the origin of coral reefs, although thousands of meters, blah, 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 blah. Although Lyell had also originally suggested a different theory, he didn't believe it. Huxley didn't believe it. Nobody was buying this Chuck's thing. It's like, no, dude, nobody's going to believe it. No one's going to believe this, Chuck. It's like, it's fine. I mean, Thomas Henry Huxley said that, basically. He basically goes, no, Chuck, no one's going to believe this. And then Chuck wrote the book and gave it to him and was like, I think I made sense of this. And Huxley goes, it's perfect. Facts be damned. It's perfect. People are going to buy this. He's like a pitch man. I'm going to pitch this to the world. And he did. Okay, Lyell didn't believe it either. Although Lyell, see, there's originally, if you didn't know what that word meant. Although Lyell had originally suggested a different theory, wonder what it was, he appreciated Darwin's reasoning and accepted it. Lyell became a close friend when Darwin moved to London. When important correspondence, Darwin also always believed that his books came out of Lyell's brains. Okay. Let's look at this here. Uniformitarianism or catastrophism. Uniformitarianism believes that the process observed today the processes are key to understanding the Earth's past. Catastrophism describes Earth's history as being stable with intermittent, short-lived, and cataclysmic events drastically shaping the surface. Yeah, that probably happened. No, it didn't. Science. Let's see here. Uniformitarianism and catastrophism. See if that happens. Anyways, basically, Lyell fully pushed uniformitarianism. This was his whole plan. There is no catastrophism. There's nothing catastrophic that happens. when I tell you guys that they just start with what does the Bible say and they go backwards from that, I mean it. It's like, how old does the Bible say? 6 days, 7,500 years? We'll do 6 million years. Okay, which became 60 billion, 60 million, then 2 billion, whatever. They just keep adding time because it should be here at this time. We see this thing happen. Oh, it's not there. Give us more time. They just buy more time. Oh, still not there. Billion years. Buy more time. They just did this. The Big Bang's going to do this. 13.8 billion years. We know it. No one can question it. It's 20 billion years. And then they'll build a bigger telescope and they'll point that out to 20 billion light years, and it'll still be fully formed, and they'll go 40 billion years. We need to build a bigger telescope. Continue. How long? 7,500 years ago? 75 billion, trillion, zillion years ago. When those kids make like millions, billions, like they make the new gigabillions, whatever. This is what they do. That's what they're going to get to at some point. It's like time inflation. So they're going through hyperinflation right now. It's funny. Oh, yep, no, it wasn't short. It was a very long amount of time. Yep. And would you say there was a flood there? Nope. Totally uniform process. It wasn't a flood. But look, you can't look in the past to see, because if you do, you know, you're not going to get the truth. You just have to look at the present. But definitely a long time. Definitely not God of the Bible. Definitely not a flood. 2 Peter 3. Let's go. The hardest thing about this for me, I'm going right back to Big Ed, is that I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people who are convinced that my religion is dangerous, and they don't know they're in a religion. And what they hate about me, or they hate about my religion, is that I believe in it, and they would never believe in anything, and they just believe in this because of these guys. It's really frustrating. The dishonesty in it. Okay, what else did I want to teach you about Charles Lyell? Oh, I know what it was. Lyell saw himself as the spiritual savior of geology, freeing the science from the old dispensation of Moses. Yep. You think it was about the science there? You think what Lyell was doing was science? No. Just like Thomas Henry Huxley, he said, I'm going to get out of this. We're building a new religion. We're getting out of this other religion. We know they're not that smart, and we know they're just controlling people because of lies. We're going to be the liars now, and we're going to control people. Lyell didn't figure out uniformitarianism because it made sense or he was right. It's because he wanted to do the opposite of what the Bible said. Same thing as instead of God creating life crawled out of the mud. Instead of us being made in the image of God, we're mutated chimpanzees. So it's the same thing. It's the opposite. The Bible says the world was formed in water. It was started with water. The world system says no, fire explosion. It's called the Great Bombardment. Everything's just the opposite. Lyell, I'll read it again. He saw himself as the spiritual savior of geology. That's not blasphemous. Freeing science from Moses. So Huxley did that. Lyell did that. Lyell and Darwin were friends. Huxley and Darwin were friends. Do you see how this is fitting together? I think I need to probably reiterate that. I can't reiterate it because I don't remember what I was going to say, but it was important. So just rewind it. Whatever I just said, rewind it. And then imagine me saying it with more emphasis. This is the scientific elite that was created. All friends. That's what I was going to say. You know, they're just meeting up. All these guys. I, in my conspiracy brain, imagine it was in a secret society, like the Hellfire Club or something. They're like talking about this. We're going to kill God. It's going to be great. Nobody's going to even know we did it. The greatest thing is nobody's going to even know who we were. And except for the people who look. And the people who look, they'll just say, don't worry about it. So it's good. The theory's too good. Okay. The next guy. This is Ernst Haeckel. Everybody needs to know the name Ernst Haeckel because you need to know your enemy. He is your enemy. Love him. Pray for him. He's long since passed. But Ernst Haeckel is one of the most destructive, dangerous, influencing people in the history of the world. You wouldn't even think that. Look, he's got his friend, his little monkey friend. Ernst Haeckel was German. What is he famous for? Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, which was wrong. It was a lie. Well, anyways, I'll just go to an actual write-up about him because I thought this was going to get into it, but it doesn't. Born in 1834, died in 1919. Haeckel corresponded with Darwin. Early in their acquaintance, Darwin wrote Haeckel to say that, "I am delighted that so distinguished a naturalist should confirm and expound my views. And I can clearly see that you are one of the few who clearly, double clearly, understands natural selection." Their initial correspondence led to an enduring friendship, with Haeckel visiting Darwin several times at his home in the village of Down. Almost all of the conclusions which I have arrived, I find confirmed by this naturalist Haeckel, whose knowledge on many points is much fuller than mine. Okay. Ernst Haeckel's alleged anti-Semitism and contributions to Nazi biology. But as Gaussman argues, Haeckel's greatest influence was, ultimately, in another tragic direction: National Socialism, his evolutionary racism, his call to the German people for racial purity and unflinching devotion to a just state, his belief that harsh and inexorable laws of evolution ruled human civilization and nature alike. Harsh laws of evolution ruled us. They rule us. What can we do? We're just animals. Conferring upon favored races, there's that word again. Oh, I got to scroll up a little bit so you can see it. Conferring upon favored races the right to dominate others. The irrational mysticism that had always stood in strange communion with his grave words about objective science all contributed to the rise of Nazism. For Haeckel, the Jews were the source of the decadence and morbidity of the modern world, and he sought their immediate exclusion from contemporary life and society. Gaussman further argues that Haeckel's malign influence did not stop with the Nazis. The German ideas became, in Gaussman's estimation, the primary source of fascism throughout Europe in the first part of the 20th century. So what you have here is a guy, Ernst Haeckel, who, just like these other guys, hated the God of the Bible and wanted to free science from Moses. And he became you could call him the spiritual leader for Germany, for naturalist Germany. We're going to get into in a second this really wild bit of research that I came across. How Germany, if you're ever a kid and you asked yourself, how did that happened? I mean, I know when I was a kid, it was like a bad thing to be anti-Semitic. Yeah. It's like, oh, we don't want to do that because of what happened in the Holocaust. And I know today things seem to be different, unfortunately. But if you were like me and you read the Diary of Anne Frank when you were a kid and you were finding out about this guy and what he did, and you're just, this wasn't that long ago. I mean, I was learning about it in the 80s. And it was 40 years earlier it happened. It's been almost as long from when I watched that from when it had happened. That's how short it was. I'm 46. That's crazy. How could anybody have gone along with this? Nobody would do this. Well, it didn't happen overnight. Okay, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like were here by force. They worked for decades to pull off what they did with the National Socialist Party. Decades. And at the very center of it was the new prophet of the theory of evolution, Ernst Haeckel. Did I put it on the other one? I did, didn't I? You're not going to believe this. I found a correspondence. So I found a correspondence between Darwin and Lyell, Darwin and Huxley. I happened to come across, actually I specifically looked for, did Thomas Henry Huxley know Ernst Haeckel in this club when you know his scientific elite? Did Did Thomas Henry Huxley know Ernst Haeckel? And the answer is yes. December 1874. My dear Haeckel. These guys were close. All of these guys were close. This must reach you in time to wish you and yours a happy new year in English fashion. Nice greeting. What say ye, THH? He continues, may your shadow never be less. Vaunted Ernst Haeckel, may your shadow never be less, and may all your enemies, unbelieving dogs, may all of your enemies, unbelieving dogs who resist the prophet of evolution, be defiled by the sitting of jackasses upon their grandmothers' graves. That's a curse. Don't curse. Don't tell people that you want a jackass to sit on the grandmother's grave. It's not nice. This must reach you in time. May your shadow never be less, and may all of your enemies, unbelieving dogs who resist the prophet of evolution. Thomas Henry Huxley and Haeckel and Lyell and Darwin were all buddies, racist buddies. When I said at the beginning of this that they were psycho-racists who, how's the wording? Who psycho-racists, I think about Bill Burr, if you've ever seen the Psycho Robot skit. Psycho-racists who built a scientific technocracy designed to undo God and then put them in control of the new order they created. This is what they did. They were all friends. And this, I imagine the socialist thing, that was a beta test of some kind. But they, what did they accomplish? Killing a bunch of Jewish people. How did this happen? How could you go from the Jewish people living beside you and then, turning them into the SS? How could that happen? Through the work of Thomas Henry Huxley. Okay, this video I'm going to show you here, it's probably the nerdiest video I've ever showed on this channel. By nerdy, I mean like scholarly, like it's a lecture from a political philosopher, Dr. Laurie Johnson, and she's just talking this through. I've been concerned to show you this because it's about 5 minutes and I can see people turning it off. Please don't. Some people say they're like, VOR, they're too big of words. I love Jesus and I love the Bible. Can we talk about that? And I understand that. But this information is so important. And what I'm going to share with you right now is so important that I want you to try to pay attention. Follow what she's saying. Follow what I'm saying. And hopefully I can make a strong point here. Excuse me. This is a discussion about how the Volkisch movement, we know in Germany, Volkisch people, right? Volkswagen. How the Volkisch movement led to Nazism. I think it was Weimar. think is what it was called. But this, how they went from no National Socialist Party to a National Socialist Party. It was all spiritual, physical. Like, you're gonna freak out when you hear this. This is such crazy information.
So agrarian romanticism and anti-urbanism, he says, matured in the second half of the 19th century in the context of the Volkisch movement, a powerful cultural disposition and social tendency which united ethnocentric populism with nature mysticism. So out of romanticism and out of what I would call reactionary thought comes this Volkisch movement, which is tied up with ethnic identity, with the peasant mentality of anti-urbanism, and with nature mysticism. You've probably heard the term or the phrase blood and soil as a slogan of the fascist movement. That's a Volkisch idea. It's the idea that the blood is, which is tied up with ethnic identity, is drawn out of the soil, that it is conditioned by the place where you live, the food that you eat, and everything around you.
Okay, so you probably keyed in on agrarian romanticism and anti-urbanism. What they're saying here is they romanticized living an agrarian life, right? They really wanted the, homesteading, people farming. They wanted to get people out of cities and go into urban life. This was the Volkisch movement, kind of a return to nature kind of thing. And you'll see the corollaries between this and like the hippie movement here in a minute. Like, urbanization's bad. We have to go back to nature, and we have to understand that it's about blood and soil, and our blood, we come from this land, and we are these people in this land. We are the Germans. We are ultra sovereign, and we are in this land. And the nature mysticism part of this is not a new thing to Europe, right? This isn't, paganism has potentially been in Europe longer than Christianity. Obviously, no. I know it has been. It may have existed for 2,000 years or longer by the time Christianity began. This is an ancient belief system in Europe. It's a very ancient belief system in Europe. Anyways, yeah, so nature mysticism. So earth worship, basically. Okay, continue. And wait till you see what earth worship leads to. It's so crazy. I always talk about how things make sense on one level scripturally, and then in history and in time and in the laws of physics. And they all tie together. It's like the Word of God is so thorough and complete. This earth worship causes a very specific part of anti-Semitism. I wouldn't have imagined this.
And it's what makes you different from people living in other places with different soil and different climate. Many people don't know enough about where anti-Semitism came from, but this is one of the places where it comes in. He says it pointedly refused to locate the sources of alienation, rootlessness, and environmental destruction in social structures, laying the blame instead to rationalism, cosmopolitanism, and urban civilization. And here's the key. The stand-in for all of these was the age-old object of peasant hatred and middle-class resentment, the Jews. Jews were seen, in other words, as the ultimate bourgeois, the ultimate in rationalism, cosmopolitanism, and urban civilization. They were seen as, by Semitic Germans, as nomadic people who lived all over the world and weren't attached to any particular soil. They were not attached to any particular place, but rather attached themselves wherever they landed. So you can see that the anti-Semitic notion of the Jews as a sort of parasitic class that is about self-interest and money came out of this reactionary way of thinking that was also anti-urban and, in a sense, worshipped the natural environment. He says in 1867 the German...
Okay. Are you putting this together? How crazy this is? This is so amazing. The left socialist thing that was coming into power only could come into power if they moved everybody into this earth worship kind of urbanization thing, right? Very much like a hippie movement kind of thing. And not only what she's saying here, that it's like, this is my land. I'm from this land. People in northern Maine, we're in Maine now, and it's like, we're not from Maine, and people let us know that. It's like, this is our land. We come from this land, and you don't. So you instill this into them, and then you go, that means that people from my land are okay, and people that come here are not, that come from away. Well, the Jews don't have a land at this time. It's like the Jews are just wandering around the world. Yeah, they don't have a land. Yeah, they're wandering around. It's like, well, they're bad because we're good because of our earth worship, and we come from this soil. So it's like the Jews are a parasite. That's what they're basically saying here. And also, they worship the living God, not the pagan gods. So you've got like a spiritual level of truth here. And this has happened time and time again in the Bible, these kind of things. You have a spiritual level of truth and then a physical level. And they're both existing simultaneously in this incident. It's like, yeah, you're not from this area, and, you know, we are going to believe in evolution here really soon, and we're more evolved than you. But also, we worship the earth, and we don't like your God. So you need to get out of here with your God.
German zoologist Ernst Haeckel coined the term ecology and began to establish it as a scientific discipline dedicated to studying the interactions between organism and environment. Haeckel also was the chief popularizer of Darwin and evolutionary theory for the German-speaking world, and developed a peculiar sort of social Darwinist philosophy he called monism. The German Monist League he founded combined scientifically based ecological holism with Volkisch social views. And getting to the heart of the matter, a student of Haeckel, the author says, claimed that the change from an agrarian to an industrial society had hastened the decline of the race, in contrast to nature, which engendered the harmonic forms of Germanism. There were the big cities, diabolical and inorganic, destroying the virtues of the race. So after discussing briefly some of the intellectual precursors of the type of ego-fascism that he's going to talk about, he turns to the development of the youth movement and the Weimar era. The Weimar Republic was the government that existed prior to the Nazi takeover in Germany. He says the youth movement is what took these ideas and kind of ran with them in the first 3 decades of the 20th century. It's as if he's saying without them, we might not have Nazism. He says the youth movement was a hodgepodge of countercultural elements blending neo-romanticism, Eastern philosophies, nature mysticism, hostility to reason, and a strong communal impulse in a confused but no less ardent search for authentic, non-alienated social relations. Their back to the land emphasis spurred a passionate sensitivity to the natural world and the damage it suffered. Okay, I just want...
Did you know that prior to the rise of the National Socialist Party, the whatever, government, political people, science people, whatever, they took the children and artificially created a social movement called the Volks, whatever it was, Volks something. They got them singing the songs. We're going back to the land, and we're going to worship the earth, and we're going to do organic farming, and we hate capitalism. And then Nazi Germany ensues. That happened again in the 60s. That was a whole other version with the ended up being the sexual revolution. But same thing. Hippie, back to the land, music, earth worship, Eastern philosophy, all these same kind of things. And it's happening again right now. It's happening right now. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Earth worship, hating God of the Bible, hating his people. Wipe out his people. It's That's part of the reason when I kind of lost it on that live the other day. You know, the Palestinian protests in the colleges. That's not an organic thing that's happening. And the guy behind it likely is the guy who turned his own people into this very same socialist enterprise. When the atheists and the trolls started talking about this, and I made the observation that's like, they used to hate Donald Trump because I think they still do, because Donald Trump is like Hitler. And the assumption there is he was bad because he was anti-Semitic and, did bad things. That's the idea. That's why Hitler was bad. And now it's like the Jews are bad. That's right. The Jews are bad is what they say. So I think that means they're probably going to vote for Trump. If the logic follows, they should probably vote for Trump now because they have something in common. We know the 60s was manufactured as well. We know this. The CIA's involvement in LSD, which actually Aldous Huxley had involvement in, which is weird. The Laurel Canyon agents, Jim Morrison's dad was the dad at the Bay of Pigs or something. It's the same kind of thing you always see with this. But that was a synthetic. That was a problem, reaction, solution. Oh, we're going to go to Vietnam. I don't know what I do with this VOR thing. There's so much information. I probably just need to just talk at you guys every night for 2 hours. What's on my mind? Okay. Vietnam was synthesized, the whole thing. Operation Northwoods, which I've covered on. I covered on this channel on YouTube. Took it down as a community guideline violation. They were going to, the military-industrial complex was going to start a war with Cuba by doing a bunch of false flag attacks and attacking Americans. And Kennedy said, "Get out of here. You're fired. Linus Lemnitzer." And then they blew his head off. So you have a war that was going on that nobody wanted to be in. And we find out, I think it's the Bay of Pigs thing, that basically America stood down or walked into it or whatever. Because why? Because they wanted to have the American support. Yeah, we got to go get the bad guys now, right? So they did this. Again, they were going to do that with Cuba and Operation Northwoods. It always works. It's called a false flag attack. So you have a war that nobody wanted, and them lying to you about why it's happening, and them doing terrible things to even start the war. And then you have the synthesis, right? Problem, reaction, solution. You've got the synthesis, which is the hippie movement. And we've got a very similar set of events going on today, which is very concerning. But anyways, I digress. This is what happened in Russia back then, or in Germany back then. This thing was entirely contrived by Haeckel and co. Now, I can close that out. Is that the farthest I'm going to go? 13, 14. There's 30 more seconds on this video. Let me switch it back on. And play.
I want to stop there and notice that this could be a description of hippies during the 1960s too. And I say that because I just want to emphasize that at a certain point, right and left, when you get to the far end of the spectrum on both the right and left, they almost meet. And this is an illustration of that for sure. Also,
yes, the left and the right meet. This is what Jesus was saying. Again, he lived it. He functionally told you it. It was prophetic, it was historic, and it was relative to the actual nature of this reality. Everything he did. So when he came here, and he said, you can't serve two masters. You'll love one and hate the other. He understood this, and the people in charge need to get you to not serve the God of the Bible. When Jesus said, "Forgive the people," it was to not be controlled constantly by something like the military-industrial complex. The whole thing. If I could think a little bit clearer and put together like a 6 or 10 hour thing, I think by the end of it, I think it'd be, you're getting a pretty good chunk of it tonight, but by the end of it, you'd go, this is why VOR is crazy, and this is why he's always like trying to debate nicely with, the atheists when I'm like tilting inside. It's really hard for me to not freak out, because when people say I'm indoctrinated and my religion sucks or whatever, and I'm like, Simon Dan did that the other day. He's like, people died for religion. I'm like, yeah, and then you got rid of Jesus, these guys did, and then more people died. No surprise. Okay. So Lyell and Darwin were friends. Haeckel and Darwin were friends. Lyell and Huxley and they're all friends together. Ernst Haeckel was terrible, and he was a part of what became Nazi Germany and the extermination of the Jews. That was what he wanted to do. He hated them, and he wanted them to be exterminated. But at least he was a good scientist, right? Well, Haeckel's embryos, the images that would not go away. A new book tells for the first time in the full extraordinary story of drawings of embryos initially published in 1868. The artist was accused of fraud, but copied and recopied his images, gained iconic status as evidence of evolution. Remember what Huxley said? The facts can be a liability. Some of the best-known illustrations in biology were challenged as forgeries after their publication 140 years ago in the books by German Darwinist Ernst Haeckel. Hundreds of texts placed them among the most controversial scientific images, but the textbooks nevertheless copied and recopied them through the 20th century for 140 years. You know what got them out of there? This is University of Cambridge. This isn't like Answers in Genesis. Though recently forced out by new scientific criticism and by creationist advocates of so-called intelligent design, some biologists still defend them. Those pesky Christians and their book, like, he lied 140 years ago. He made it up 140 years ago. But hey, it's Ernst Haeckel. He's a hell of a guy. Really, you just got to get to know him. Let's leave that in there. It was such a good idea. And he was such a good guy. Nope. Imagine we live in that world where the guy who birthed the Nazis, lied about the theory of evolution, and nobody knows this, and it's in the textbooks. I've found colored pictures of this very recently, you could tell it's a modern textbook, probably the last 10, 15 years. Can you imagine a world where we would go, hey, you lying racist POS, we're going to take your information out of the textbook now, and you're a terrible person, and everybody should be warned about what you did. No. We live in a world where nobody knows what he did. He's a vaunted, celebrated celebrity of sport, of science still. And he just lied his face off and fabricated drawings and put them in there. And the school books were like, yeah, great guy, great message. Science. Those pesky creationists, they came in and they took away this thing that we like to tell people. We like to tell the kiddies. And I have similar scientific failures for other ones of these guys. Thomas Henry Huxley, he's been a topic of discussion. I seamlessly transitioned into something you guys didn't even know I was talking about. This is me showing you the mistakes that all of these yahoos made. Great scientists, right? Don't you love that we constantly get this? Ancient bird with a movable beak rewrites the story of avian evolution. A skull bone from 67 million years ago reveals that ancestors of modern birds had jointed beaks, not immobile ones as biologists have long thought. Here they are. Back, and PC. Janavis, Finland, who cares? A 67-million-year-old bird, that's what I say, skull, has overturned an established theory about how modern birds evolved. An established theory. Unlike most birds, the flightless group that includes ostriches and emus can't move their upper beaks, a feature that, for the past 155 years, has been considered primitive. The discovery of a jointed upper beak in a bird from the dinosaur age, however, suggests that the early ancestor of all modern birds may have had a jaw that looked more like that of a turkey than an ostrich. No, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. I didn't update it, New Scientist. All right, well, we're going to read what we can read. The assumption... Oh, here we go. The assumption that ostriches, rheas, emus, and kiwis somehow retain features that are indicative of what the ancestor of modern birds might have been like. I think that's actually not right, he says. I always assumed it was, but I don't buy it anymore. In 1876, biologist Thomas Henry Huxley proposed that birds with fused upper beaks had maintained this trait from ancient ancestors, and that jointed upper beaks, which allow the top beak to move up and down independently of the head, evolved later. So here's what happens. I can't read the rest of the article. Huxley said, this beak thing, this is primitive. It's one beak piece. It's primitive. And then in the future, they evolved two beak pieces so they could articulate differently. So he goes, those are the old ones, the simple one. And then these are the new ones, the more complicated one. Because evolution, that's how this works. We go from 1 to 2. Why not? Is how this works. So these old beaks are probably like 200 million years old. And then the new beaks, they're like 100 million years old or whatever. And then they find out that what they thought was the old beak that turned into the new beak wasn't what they thought it was, or something like that. Which way would that have been? Dyslexia, brain fog. Okay, let's talk this through for a second. Which allow the top beak to move up and down independently had evolved later. Right, so they think that it would evolve later. So you go back and it's not there, and they found it. They found the two beak version that they thought came much later, 200 million years ago or whatever. Just exactly the opposite of what they would have thought. So instead of it being an ancient version, they both existed simultaneously. One for one bird, one for the other. Huxley was wrong. Huxley sucks. Suxley. So Haeckel blew it, and Huxley blew it. Lyell blew it because he said everything was uniformitarian. There's no such thing as catastrophism. His whole worldview is based on there isn't catastrophism. And then they found out that there actually is catastrophism. We know now there's catastrophism. It's a combination of the two. So what you have is like a giant flood, which they know, they've proven, right? The reason the Pacific Northwest floods in my J. Harlan Brett's videos that I've done, the reason I cover that is, what did they say to J. Harlan Brett's? You can't have a flood up here because you're breaking the law of uniformitarianism. In the words of the lecturer that I referred to when I show that clip. And where would the water come from? You can't break the laws of uniformitarianism. Well, they got broken by Bretts, who beat basically the ghost of Lyell. Not really. It was still being taught. And it still is taught today, which is crazy. It's not true at all. You get canyons through massive flooding, and then the water at the bottom of it, because now it's the low point, runoff actually goes down that tributary. It's just the opposite of what they say. Anyways, we're going to do Julain Huxley now, And then, well, I guess I'll end this with the mistake that Julian Huxley did, which is actually what kicked off this particular Huxley research. I'm sharing a screen that I'm not sharing. It's coming. My fourth window. All right. Julian Huxley. Thomas Henry has somebody Huxley. Then Julian and Aldous are born. So it's the Huxley family. Remember I shared that video at the beginning and how much they've had an effect on this. Julian Huxley was the former president of the British Humanist Association. He was also a zookeeper, a zoologist, or whatever. And he coined the term transhumanism. Didn't I look that up? Julian Huxley, transhumanism. Transhumanism. I believe in transhumanism. He actually coined the term. Oh, once enough people can truly say that the human species will be on the threshold of a new kind of existence. Interesting. He came up with transhumanism. Anyways, big deal in evolution. He also came up with something called synthesizing, or the synthesis theory, which is that you have cosmology and geology and biology and paleontology and genetics, and they all fit together to prove the theory of evolution. And they don't actually consider cosmology, but I do, because you need the universe to come from nothing as well. All right, so Huxley came up with the synthesis plan, and he basically said, now we know, because all of these different areas agree. And when you debate atheists, they'll say that to you. It's the full of science. They all agree. Okay. I want to cover the transhumanism thing first. I shouldn't, but I'm going to. Do you remember earlier we covered what the serpent said in the garden, which is you can be like God, you can't trust what God said, and you're going to live forever. Transhumanism is the devil's lie that we can be like God, and through our own evolution and technology and our own strength, almost like Nimrod, began to become a Gibborim, we can ascend into godhood. We started off as mud, and then we became sentient, and then we're going to become gods. Ray Kurzweil always talks about this. Kurzweil, let's see here. Maybe some of you are familiar with Kurzweil. Longtime life extension member. He's an inventor who's worked on into artificial intelligence, has dazzled, blah, blah, blah. He invented the scanner, written 5 books. Ray predicts that in a few decades we'll have cell-sized robots circulating through our bloodstreams that will conquer pathological processes. Going beyond that, Ray states that the future scientists will be able to upload a person's consciousness into a computer, thus creating true physical immortality and immorality, maybe. Okay, so Kurzweil's the ones like, we're going to become God, right? I've made videos on him before. So transhumanism and life extension run hand in hand. What is the life extension with transhumanism? Life extension, transhumanists often focus on extending human life significantly, potentially to immortality. This could be achieved through methods like anti-aging technologies, regenerative medicine, and possibly in the future, mind uploading. So, did God really say, right? Huxley handled that. And what's interesting is the author was talking about how she treated Thomas Henry and Julian as one person, because they lived from like 1820 to 1970 combined, and they had one basic intention. How could they even do that? We're going to cover it in a second, but did God really say, nope, you're made in the image of an animal? You can become like God, you're evolving into godhood, and you shall not die, right? This is the lie that the devil told Adam and Eve. And he knew it worked. People think that we're devolving. Adam and Eve were way smarter than we are. And the devil tricked them. We're like stealing candy from a baby. which nobody should do. So Julian Huxley is a humanist, transhumanist. This is the grandson of Thomas Henry. Julian Huxley was deeply influenced by his grandfather, who died when he was 8 years of age. In his autobiography, he discussed his calling. I thought of my grandfather defending Darwin against Bishop Wilberforce. This keeps coming up. Must have been a real hoot of a debate. Of the slow acceptance of Darwin's view in the face of religion and prejudice, and realized more fully than ever that Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection had emerged as one of the great liberating concepts of science, freeing man from cramping myths and dogma, the Bible, achieving for life the same sort of illuminating synthesis that Newton had provided for an inanimate nature. I resolved that all my scientific studies would be undertaken in the Darwinian spirit. Remember when Darwin said Huxley was his, evangelist of his devil gospel? Let's see here. Darwinian spirit, and my major work would be concerned with evolution in nature and in man. Defining religion. Okay. What this is, there's little bugs in this house. They fly in my mouth and in my nose. Nom, 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 nom. Protein. I'm good. I don't know what they're called. Nasims or something. They're really tiny. They fly through the window screen. They suck. I'm glad you guys don't normally see them, but they're always attacking me. I'm a true professional. I never even cry about it. I'm crying about it right now. This is some of the most damning evidence I've come across as a researcher, because I don't go to Answers in Genesis or these other places. I'm going to go to Answers in Genesis in a minute, so that's going to be bad. But I do my own research. I come across these really weird factoids in weird places. But this is the humanists.org talking about Julian Huxley. Evolutionary Humanism, Revisited. The continuing relevance of Julian Huxley. Defining religion is never an easy task. Ask John Dewey, who was also to discover when he came to writing A Common Faith, especially when the definition breaks away from the notion of a divine being or a special type of worship service. While fully recognizing this, Julian Huxley nevertheless felt that evolutionary humanism could be best understood as the latest and most scientifically accurate development of the human need for understanding the cosmos and finding one's proper place within it. Religions, like other cultural artifacts, are created by humans to answer basic needs. The desire for mystical transcendence is simply the deeply felt thirst for knowledge, the wish to see a world in a grain of sand in heaven, blah, blah, blah. But previous religions had become static, too concerned with preserving dogmas and rituals. So we thought we would take that over and monopolize it. And were no longer in tune with the new scientific understanding of evolution that had revolutionized such fields as geology, biology, physics, paleontology, and cosmology. People think it's like, no, you don't have to worry about origin of life. I don't have to worry about where the universe came from. I don't have to worry about where the stars came from. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Because the theory of evolution, the new understanding of evolution, the new dogma, the new bias, the new belief system of the world had revolutionized. So evolution revolutionized, that's hard to say, geology, evolution revolutionized biology, physics, paleontology, and cosmology, because we needed all of them. We needed the whole kit and caboodle to make this thing make sense. In the final chapter of his book, Huxley offered what he called evolutionary humanism as a developed religion. On TikTok all the time, I say that science is a religion, and they're like, no, it's not. Nah, I'm not in a religion. I hate religion. I wouldn't be in one because I hate them. You're in a religion. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Well, the people who created it said it was a religion. Doesn't matter. It's not. It's science. And science beat your God. It's a religion, bro. Sorry. It's funny. I'm probably less religious than most of the atheists. Okay. Let's see here. In his view, 20th century man, it is clear, needs a new organ for dealing with destiny, a new system of religious beliefs and attitudes adapted to the new situation in which his societies now have to exist. The radically new feature of the present situation may perhaps be stated thus. Earlier religions, meaning we're the newest one, and belief systems were largely adaptations to cope with man's ignorance and fears, with the result that they came to concern themselves primarily with stability of attitude. But the need today is for a belief system adapted to cope with his knowledge and his creative possibilities, and this implies the capacity to meet, inspire, and guide changes. This belief was evolutionary humanism. The central idea of this new religion was human fulfillment. Do what thou wilt. This belief system, this is the evolutionary humanist website, by the way, if you don't remember. This is the but don't call them W, Humanist Association. Because it's about you and you, both of you. And you are important. Yous. It's the yous. I'm from Hispanic Part Denver. It's the yous. All right. Yous guys. This belief system was evolutionary humanism. The central idea of this new religion was human fulfillment and man's most sacred duty, Huxley expounded. And at the same time, his most glorious opportunity is to promote the maximum fulfillment of the evolutionary process on this earth. Yep. Man is not merely the latest dominant type produced by evolution, but it is a sole active agent on the earth. His destiny is to be responsible for the whole future of the evolutionary process of this planet. The gist of blah, 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 blah. I prophesy with confidence to become the dominant idea system of the new phase of psychosocial evolution. Yeah. Science is a religion, based on the guys who built it, based on every definition. Well, we tell you what to believe, we tell you what to think, we tell you what to do. And they've been indoctrinated into it. Isn't that wild? Okay. I'm going to end on kind of a high note. So, Lyell screwed up his one thing. Uniformitarianism was wrong. Huxley screwed up the birds and some other things too. Who else did we cover? Whoever. Oh, Haeckel forged the embryos and got busted for 140 years. And that stayed in the textbook for 140 years. Well, what did Julain Huxley do? This is so fun. This guy here. Okay, I apologize that this is from a creationist website. I actually was trying to find information on the Huxley crap because I remember seeing it on a Carl Sagan show and going, doesn't seem right. And sure enough, it was wrong. I was going to find all their sources and I have them saved in bookmarks and their quotes and stuff, but they did a really good job putting this together. And it's pretty good. I don't like Answers in Genesis America normally. This is the Canadian version. It's pretty good. I don't know. So hopefully they allow me to play it. But what did Julain Huxley do to show that he was also a terrible scientist? They're a terrible scientist. That's what I want to show here. They weren't even good at what they did. I guess apparently in science you don't have to be good at it. You could just be whatever You don't even have to produce any results over hundreds of years. It's like really crappy fortune telling. All right.
Now, let's jump through time here a bit and get some more modern supposed examples of proofs of evolution. Because sometimes critics think, well, that was way back when, Darwinian evolution was in its infancy, and scientists obviously found way better proofs as time went along. Well, here's an example for naturalism that's persisted since 1952, and from the grandson of Charles Darwin's bulldog, T.H. Huxley, Julain Huxley, who published an article titled Evolution's Copycats. His goal was to use an easily understood example of natural selection in action to explain its undoubted ability to cause creatures to adapt. Then he would extrapolate that idea to try and persuade his audience that all of life's incredible design could be explained naturalistically. Huxley's original article in Life magazine described how he believed samurai crabs supposedly evolved. He reasoned that the resemblance of these crabs' carapace to that of an angry Japanese warrior was far too specific and detailed to be accidental.
I know I covered quickly the Nebraska man thing, but Henry Fairfield Osborne is like, it's 100% a tooth. I said it, bona fide. Julian Huxley is so bad at science. Just weird, controlling the world. You believe what he believes, creating transhumanism, whatever. That he looked at this crab and it looked like a samurai, like a Japanese soldier with his headgear on. He's like, that looks like evolution. I can use this and tell the world something, and they can see it and go, wow. Watch what happens.
And thus could only have been brought about by means of natural selection operating over centuries of time. And his argument was that basically when superstitious Japanese fishermen saw crabs with any likeness to a samurai's mask, they threw them back, benefiting crabs with a face, resulting in more and more crabs with a more clearly designed samurai mask over time. And eventually, this argument became quite popular when it was used by famous evolutionist Carl Sagan on his Cosmos TV series in the 1970s. Well, unfortunately,
you guys know how I feel about Carl Sagan. He's the guy that brought you Pale Blue Dot, by the way. He's terrible. Science, a Candle in the Darkness or whatever. I covered it a lot on the Aliens movie that I made. Huxley didn't do any science here. He literally just made this up in his mind. And he probably had been doing it long enough. All these guys got in trouble so many times. He probably just was doing it and he's like, oh, you caught me. Okay. Well, I'm dead and gone. Doesn't matter now. But he didn't go and ask the fisherman, hey. He didn't go observe the fisherman. Oh, crab face, get it out of here. They didn't do that. He didn't do any science here. He didn't do any science. He didn't go look in the fossils in the past, or like he wins the Charles Lyell Award. You get the Charles Lyell Award. Don't worry about the past. Just what do you see in the present? It looks like a face of a samurai warrior. Okay, it's evolution.
For evolutionists. Besides the fact that these samurai face shapes occur in nearly all members of this crab family, whether they live near Japan or not, and that there are examples of fossil Doripid type crabs which predate the samurai warrior caste by thousands of years by their own evolutionary timeline, i.e. there were samurai crabs before there were samurai, the story really doesn't make much sense at all when the truth came out. And the absolute kill shot for this supposed evolutionary proof comes from evolution-believing marine biologist and crustacean expert Joel Martin, former associate curator of invertebrate zoology at the Natural History Museum in Los Angeles. He showed the absolute absurdity of the entire story when he revealed, the fishermen who make their living from the Sea of Japan do not eat any of these crabs. Whether they resemble a samurai, a human face, or merely a crab is a moot point. All are thrown back. For Dorip japonica reaches a maximum size of only 31 millimeters, or 1.2 inches, across the back, not at all worth the trouble of retrieving from the nets, let alone sorting through to see which ones resemble a face and which ones do not. So, in addition to the other facts of the matter, if the entire story was based on fishermen selecting these crabs, the samurai crab is obviously not proof of evolution.
Yeah. So you could follow that up with Carl Sagan, crab, samurai, and listen to it's quick.
In the form of crab 7. To this day, every year on the 24th of April, their descendants proceed to the Akama Shrine, which contains the mausoleum of the drowned 7-year-old emperor, Antoku. There, they conduct a ceremony of remembrance for the life and death of the Heike warriors.
If you guys want to see how science is done, this is how everything we believe was done. Oh, that crab looks like a samurai. It's definitely proof. We looked at it. No one can stop us. No one can stop us. So we're just going to tell everybody this. And then you get a yahoo like Carl Sagan, who's like, I really believe in evolution, because he also hates the God of the Bible, and he wanted to do what he would. He's passed. And he built a show. Carl Sagan was Neil deGrasse Tyson before Neil deGrasse Tyson was Neil deGrasse Tyson. Carl Sagan was Bill Nye's professor. Bill Nye said, when I mentored under my professor, the great Carl Sagan, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It doesn't matter if anybody, like, who's going to check us, right? Who's going to check it? Nobody's going to check us. Oh, we're checking ourselves. Okay, perfect. What does Jesus say about the wolf and the being afraid of the wolf from earlier? You can't let the wolf watch the house or something. Oh man, it's funny. If anybody can figure out what I'm saying with these, you should put it in the chat, put it in the comment, put it in the comments. Anyways, okay, it looks like a face of a samurai warrior. No one's gonna stop us, and then Carl Sagan's gonna come by 20 years later and recapitulate the theory.
But there's a strange postscript to this story. The fishermen say that the Heike samurai wander the bottom of the inland sea still, in the form of crabs. There are crabs to be found here which have curious markings on their backs, patterns which resemble a human face, with the aggressive scowl of a samurai warrior from medieval Japan. These Heike crabs, when caught, are not eaten. They're thrown back into the sea in commemoration of the doleful events of the Battle of Dano-Ura. This legend raises a lovely problem. How does it come about that the face of a warrior is cut on the carapace of a Japanese crab? How could it be? The answer seems to be that humans made this face. But how? Like
Seems
many
to
other
be.
features, the patterns on the back or carapace of this crab are inherited. But among crabs, as among humans, there are many different hereditary lines. Now, suppose purely by chance, among the distant ancestors of this crab, there came to be one which looked just a little bit like a human face. Long before the battle, fishermen may have been reluctant to eat a crab with a human face. In throwing it back into the sea, they were setting into motion a process of selection. If you're a crab and your carapace is just ordinary, the humans are going to eat you. But if it looks a little bit like a face, they'll throw you back and you'll be able to have lots of nice little baby crabs that all look just like you. As many generations passed of crabs and fisher folk alike, the crabs with patterns that look most like a samurai face preferentially survived. Until eventually, there was produced not just a human face, not just a Japanese face, but the face of a samurai warrior. All this has nothing to do with what the crabs might want. The selection is imposed from the outside. The more you look like a samurai, the better your chances of survival. Eventually, there are a lot of crabs that look like samurai warriors.
Science. Yep. Sorry I made you watch that. Hack. Anyways, yeah, that's it. That's Julain Huxley, his greatest hit. I was looking through the Life magazines to actually try to find the article. I went through like the entire year of 1962. I couldn't find it, but I really wanted to have that screenshot for the video I was making. Yeah, he did that. He just told everybody a story. And if you've seen me like on the lives, I'm like, I don't want to hear the story, Eric. Don't tell. Yeah, we can imagine. Stop pretending, or just say. We just tell creation myths. We tell folk, folk, nature mystic fairy tales, and that's what we do because we love our religion and we're dogmatic adherents to it. Stop telling me the story, Carl. Stop telling me the story, Carl. Stop telling me the story, Julain. Or just disclose that you're just making it all up. That'd be great. Haeckel and his embryos. Lyell building his worldview on the flood didn't happen. He's proven wrong. It's just hacks. Hacks and racist psychos. They suck. So that's why one of the reasons I'm so critical of it. The good news is, if you're a Christian, you're still watching this. Thank you for suffering through my brain fog episode tonight. The good news is the devil's real. That's funny. The good news is God is real, and the devil who is trying to get us to disobey God, to leave God, is using the same tactics. Through these people, did God say, you can be like God, you're going to live forever? The good news is that as terrible as what we see is, it's very strong evidence in favor of God being real. And the devil hating the book, the devil hating Christianity, and the devil hating Judaism. And it seems like no matter how far we progress, we just end up falling into the same, what does Jesus say? A dog always goes back to his puke. I got that one right. It wasn't the wolf one that throws me off. It's crazy. Jesus explained this whole thing. You really serve God or you serve mammon. And, the idea of we are in a material world, I'm a material girl, that's the definition of that from Madonna, of course. It's the same idea. It's because my life is meaningless, I need to find meaning somewhere. And I'm going to buy stuff that I don't need to stay in basically consumer servitude. And Jesus was an anti-materialist. Don't store your treasures on earth, where they're going to be corrupted. I feel like Jesus laid all of this out of what these individuals are about. And if you're a Christian, you're toying with maybe, is the evolution true? Is it not true? If you went through COVID and you watched all the stuff going on with that, and if you have concerns about other scientific things you're seeing, they've been lying about who we are too. They stole our identity from us. These guys, this family, this mafia. And it really sucks. But the good news is God's word is true and God loves us, and he said this was going to happen. So whatever. Do your research though, please, because the atheists, I have to give them credit. I have to give Huxley and crew credit. They worked really hard, a lot harder than Christians do with this. So whether it's watching my content or Jason Lyell, Stephen Meyer, James Tour, make sure you're learning, because we have to be able to give an account for what we believe. And the version that they taught us is falling apart in real time, and it's really exciting to be a part of. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you everyone who supports what we're doing. If you feel led to support us, we have a Patreon. The link is it should be in the description of the video. We couldn't do it without you, and we love doing this. So I should be back on the next couple weeks with a new one. I've got these 3 or 4 different things I'm researching concurrently, and wanted to at least get this one out and put a stamp on it. But hopefully, you know, if you have somebody who is around you who's super science minded, maybe you could send it to them and make them watch it. Tell them you could laugh at the guy. He's funny. He was having brain fog all night. Okay, guys, that's it. Thank you for being here. Please share it. Please like the video on your way out. I love you all. End transmission.